Hello, world. Good morning, namaste, and Nisam Bulavinaka from Sydney, Australia. I am Sashi Singh, the host of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Welcome once again to the weekly edition of our program, SSTP. Well, after months of waiting, Fiji's election date was finally announced last week. If you do not already know it, let me state the obvious right now. Fiji goes to the polls on Wednesday, 14th December 2022. That is, in just another 38 days, Fiji will vote for the government of their choice. Remember, Fiji, your vote has power. Exercise your right to vote. Why is it important for people to vote, one may ask? Let me tell you that one of the responsibilities of citizens is to vote. The law in Fiji does not require citizens to vote, unlike here in Australia, where voting is compulsory. But voting is a very important part of any democracy. By voting, citizens are participating in the democratic process. Citizens vote for leaders to represent them and their ideas, and the leaders support the citizens' interests. Under a democratic system that is transparent and accountable, free and transparent, free and fair elections are the foundation of every healthy democracy, ensuring that government authority derives from the will of the people. It is the people who have the ultimate say in who governs them for the next 4 years. Now that we know that Fiji is heading to the polls on 14 December 22, let me share some news with you. Sashi Singh's Talking Point over the next 4 Sundays will be speaking to the leaders of the Sodelpa Party, the Fiji Labour Party, National Federation Party, and the People's Alliance Party. This is the following 4 Sundays. Today we begin our series of interviews with the leader of the Unity Fiji Party, Mr. Savenaca Narube. However, on the Sunday before the election date, that is Sunday, 11th December 2022, SSTP will be speaking to each of the 5 opposition leaders. The program will address their campaigns and allow each opposition leader a window of opportunity to give their opposition leaders' address to the nation. This will be a program not to be missed, because you will be able to hear all 5 opposition party leaders for the very last time before polling day on the SSTP platform. You can listen to their leaders' address to the nation and make up your mind who to vote for if you have not decided by then. So, exciting times ahead, and let me also tell you that SSTP is also planning some other surprises leading up to election day and the count of the votes. But details of that will be shared when the time is right and when I have confirmation from my participants. I hope wherever you are well settled in to enjoy what promises to be a captivating, engaging, and enlightening interview in today's episode 43 with my chief guest, Mr. Savenaca Narube, former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji and the leader of the Unity Fiji Party. We will shortly discuss the Unity Fiji Party manifesto that was launched last Friday, as well as discuss what the party brings to the table of national politics and what are its expectations in General Elections 22. All that and a whole lot more with our chief guest in just a short while from now. As always, I request that today, as we go right around the world by the wonders of Facebook and YouTube, that you please share the SSTP page on your timelines so that we may share the interview with Mr. Savenaca Narube with as many interested people as possible. And as always, to ensure that you receive instant notifications for all future programs, please like the SSTP page and follow us too. And for those people already tuned in, a very, very good morning to you. Those of you sending stars, Atu Morirao, thank you very much. A big Vinaka Vakalevu to you. Send those stars, send those likes, send those love heart emojis. Keep them coming. It tells us that you are interested. Well, welcome to the Thinking People's program, Sashi Singh's Talking Point, live on Facebook and on YouTube. As always, we begin today's episode 43 with a quick recap of what has been making the main news headlines in Fiji and Australia with our regular contributor, Nikhil Singh. Nikhil, welcome to SSTP and a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Sashi. Good to be with you.
Well, Nikhil, let's start immediately. There's been a hive of activity news-wise in Fiji. Let's get straight to your segment. Let us start with the Unity Fiji Party releasing their manifesto on Friday, which contains several new measures which the party believes will attract voters as we head to the polls next month. Take us through the highlights only. Please note that our chief guest today is the Unity Fiji Party leader, Mr. Savenaca Narube, with whom I will dissect the manifesto. Go ahead, Nikhil.
Thanks, Sashi. In very high level, I've just picked up a few things from the manifesto. The Unity Fiji Party has said that they will appoint a constitutional review commission to review the imposed 2013 constitution, and there's a promise to an opportunity for the Unity Fiji to refer to the 1997 constitution and the draft constitution of the Yesgai Commission. The other point of interest that I've seen in the manifesto is the appointment of a new electoral commission to organize a national referendum on the constitutional amendment bill. The party also says that they will establish a commission for peace and reconciliation. The other one that will interest many people, Sashi, is the reinstatement of the Great Council of Chiefs. The party says they will bring back the GCC, and also they will establish a land commission to review all land issues. Unity Fiji will reverse all legislation, decrees, and administrative policies that they say have weakened the control of the land by the landowners and increased the allowable tenure to a minimum of 50 years for leases under ALTA. The party says they will review all laws, including the Public Order Act and the Media Act, that they say limit the rights and freedoms under the Constitution and have a more equitable ethnic distribution of public service positions. Unity Fiji Party in the manifesto says they will establish a National Security Commission to recommend measures to strengthen national security and avoid political crisis. The last one that I have on my list, Sashi, is the lifting of the retirement age of public service to 60 years rather. In relation to people who have withdrawn the FNPF, the party says, Unity Fiji Party says they will reimburse FNPF withdrawals made during COVID-19 pandemic for those earning under $40,000. Sashi, I know you'll dissect the manifesto with Mr. Narube.
Well, certainly will. And those are just some of the highlights that you've spoken about. The manifesto deals with a lot more. And we have the honor and privilege of talking to Mr. Narube today. And he will no doubt explain in detail what the party's manifesto stands for. Now, Nikhil, we're just over a month away from Election Day. The William Ngavoka-led Sodelpa Party is making headlines for all the wrong reasons. What is going on?
Well, Sashi, is certainly not the position the party wants to be with elections around the corner. It all started with the deflection of 8 Sodelpa members to the People's Alliance, including the Tui Dakau, Ratu Nengama Lalambalavu, Ro Filipe Tuisawau, Inose Korindrani, Ratu Antonio Lalambalavu, Micheli Bulinoda, Pedeli Bosenimbola, Ratu Tevita Navuro Relevu, and Jesse Sakuru. These are high-profile Sodelpa members, Sashi. They were all MPs, Sodelpa MPs, but are now going under the People's Alliance banner. Ro Filipe says that they could not reconcile the differences given the difficulties within Sodelpa. He's made mention of the Nawai Kula case. He says, Ro Filipe, he says the report that resulted in Nico Nawai Kula being imprisoned claims came from within a faction of SEDELPA. Now, SEDELPA leader Viliamin Gavoka has assured supporters that he has full support of a strong team that is committed to the party. That's what he said last week, but I don't know if that holds true, Sashi, because there's a whole lot more that has happened, and I'll cover that in a second. In relation to the deflection of SEDELPA MPs, Gavoka says he knew that MPs like Ro Filipe Tuisavau and others did not have the heart to go with SEDELPA, but stayed on pretending to be SEDELPA parliamentarians and collecting allowances, knowing that they will move somewhere else. In another development, Unity Fiji on Friday claimed that SEDELPA had terminated an agreement made in July without providing them with a reason. This was the memorandum of understanding that I'm talking about, signed between the two political parties, which allowed them to share resources and campaign platforms in the lead up to the polls. Now, when Gavoka said last week that he has the full support of his party, yesterday there were more dramas at the SEDELPA special general meeting in Suva. Their provisional candidate, Faith Grace, walked out of the party's meeting. Grace was not ready to accept a single nomination for the party's deputy leader position. Aseri Randondro was acting in this position, and some members, including Grace, did not approve to have Randondro as the lone candidate for this position. There are now reports that Randondro ended up withdrawing his nomination, Sashi.
Well-known activist, founder and chief executive officer of community organization, the Foundation for Rural Integrated Enterprises and Development, FRIEND, and former chief guest of episode 12 on SSTP, Ms. Sashi Kiran, is going into politics. She is now a provisional candidate for the upcoming elections. More on this, Nikhil.
Well, the Fiji Times broke this story reporting that Sashi Kiran resigned from a position on Thursday last week. The paper quoted Kiran saying, "It's time to work at national level. People are crying to be heard." She said the people are crying out to be heard for help to meet their basic needs, whether it be water, food, or livelihood. She said the next chapter of her journey takes her to try and serve people at the national level. And on Friday, the National Federation Party put all the speculation to rest when they announced Sashi Kiran as one of their provisional candidates for the December elections. Kiran is a well-known activist, dedicating some 20 years serving the community as the founder and CEO of FRIEND. She is also a former journalist. FRIEND President Andi Makalesi Tavangia has wished Kiran well. She said Kiran's labor of love and all her efforts over the past 21 years have resulted in a platform change.
All right, and last week, as we went to air, we found out about when Fiji will head to the polls. Now, that date has been set, as I said in my introduction. What are some of the key dates in the lead up to election day?
Sashi, the writ has been issued, as we all know, but now we focus on the remaining key aspects of this process leading up to the election. Candidate nominations are currently open. That will close on the 14th of November at 12 noon. And then on the 15th, the next day, candidates who have nominated will have a chance to withdraw if they so change their minds by 12 noon on the 15th. And then on the same day, the Fiji Elections Office will deal with any objections and appeals. That'll take place between 12 noon and 4 p.m. The other big, date to look out for, Sashi, is the 18th the 18th of November. This is when the candidates who are confirmed will be allocated numbers. That's when the national candidates ball draw will take place. For the life of me, I still can't understand why we can't have the party symbol and the candidate's name. Elections are all about making it easier for people to have a say in the democratic process, but that's what it is. Then on the 23rd of November, postal voting applications close at 5 p.m. So that's another important date. If people are applying for a postal vote, this is the time to do it. It closes on the 23rd of November at 5 p.m. Then we move on to actual voting, Sashi. Pre-poll voting begins on the 5th of December, and that concludes on the 9th of December. 4 days of pre-polling. On the 12th of December is when the media blackout on campaigning will kick in at 7:30 a.m. And that'll be for a period of 48 hours. And of course, on the 14th, it's election day. Voting will start at 7:30 a.m. and conclude at 6 p.m. Postal votes must be received by 6 p.m. on the 14th of December. Such after that, it will all eyes will be on the results. The Fiji Elections Office will the provisional results will be progressively released through the Fiji Elections Office results app. I have actually downloaded the app. It's quite user friendly, easy to navigate. Sashi.
Yeah, well, we'll just hope that it doesn't go kaput on the night when the counting starts. The People's Alliance leader Sitiveni Rambuke has given Attorney General Ayar Sayed Qayyum something to think about whenever he, the AG, wants to mention the 1987 coup for political point scoring. What do you have for us on that front?
This is in relation to the Attorney General who made some statements against the People's Alliance and the NFP. The Attorney General called the People's Alliance and the NFP partnership a coalition of convenience. The AG also labeled their coalition as an unbalanced relationship and touched on Mr. Rambuka's role in the 1987 coup. Now, in response, Sitiveni Rambuka asked if the Fiji First Party General Secretary Ayar Sayed Qayyum does not like coups, why is he working with another coup leader? This is, of course, in reference to Frank Bainimarama and his coup of 2006. The NFP leader, Professor Biman Prasad, also took aim at Qayyum, saying that he did not understand transparency, accountability, ethical and good governance, and working for the people at all times instead of the other way around. He said the NFP had condemned every coup and political upheaval in the country, and the 1987 coup was no exception, Sashi.
All right, Nikhil, now closer to home. In our last episode, you shared the latest inflation figures. I think no one was surprised with another interest rate hike announced by the Reserve Bank of Australia on Melbourne Cup Day last Tuesday. Now, this rise will put many families and households in financial stress. I believe the RBA predicts more financial pain. Please tell us more.
Yes, actually, the ABC reported that the Reserve Bank expects a couple of tough years for Australians, with real wages continuing to fall as inflation persists and unemployment starts to rise. Last week, as you mentioned, the bank added more pain to mortgage borrowers with a 0.25 of a percentage point rate rise. That move will push many variable mortgage interest rates well above 5%. RBA has raised its inflation forecast with a peak of 8% in December, with CPI still growing at 3.2% at the end of 2024. This means wages growth is expected to near 4% by late 2024, meaning it will take until the second half of 2024 before workers see a real pay rise, Sashi.
All right, and the Federal Workplace Relations Minister Tony Burke has unveiled Labour's Secure Jobs, Better Pay Bill, revealing the wide ranging changes to industrial law. Labour made no secret about their industrial relations agenda during the election campaign. What are some of the highlights of this bill?
So actually, I've picked up a few points. Certainly, it's quite an extensive bill, but this bill will see the introduction of multi-employer bargaining, which means that the bill replaces the existing low-paid bargaining system with the supported stream, a simpler way for workers in sectors such as community service, cleaning, early childhood to negotiate one pay deal across multiple employers. Arbitration is also under this bill, which will allow the Fair Work Commission to resolve intractable bargaining disputes through arbitration where there is no reasonable prospect of agreement being reached. Minimum pay and unpaid wages, such in earlier episodes of SSTP, I have actually covered when employers have been caught shortchanging or underpaying their employees. This bill will make it easier to recover unpaid wages by increasing the cap on small claims from $20,000 to $100,000, allowing employees to access the Fair Work Commission rather than the courts, so a less expensive exercise for those trying to recoup money owed to them. Gender pay gap and discrimination, gender pay equity will become an objective of the Fair Work Act, and the requirement to win an equal pay order will be relaxed. Flexible work, of course, when COVID set in, Sashi, we saw millions of Australians transitioning to a work from home arrangement during the lockdown period. But some employers are now actually mandating people to go back to the office. This bill will see that employers will be legally required to reach an agreement with eligible employees who request flexible work hours or arrangements, including proposing an alternative if the employee's request cannot be accommodated on reasonable business grounds. Now, will this bill have the support of the opposition? I think no surprises here, Sashi. The federal opposition has said it will oppose the bill, which the Liberal leader Peter Dutton described as a quote, ticking off on the shopping list for the union movement. Sashi, in the interest of being open and transparent, I am a union official. What I can say is Peter Dutton is far, far, far away from the truth.
All right, I don't want your union views on this program, Nikhil, that's for sure. But look, that is the news highlights from Fiji and Australia. And once again, Nikhil, job well done. Thank you very much for your contribution today. As always, greatly appreciated. Have a nice day. Cheers now.
You do, Sashi. Thank you.
Cheers. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point on Facebook Live. We ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. As I say, Fijians want to know. Please like and follow the SSTP page if you have not done so. And Vijay Ram, Naresh Kumar, Avnil Dil, Nina Moreno, thank you very much for your stars. Thank you very much for your likes. Keep them coming. And just before we meet our chief guest, I have an important announcement to share with our viewers. Sashi Singh's Talking Point, SSTP recognizes that questioning, constructive arguments, and opinions are part of conversation, but posts with aggressive personal attacks, profanity, name-calling, swearing, defamatory in nature, and/or threatening will be removed immediately, and offenders will be blocked from being a part of the SSTP program. Let's observe these rules and enjoy the program. Well, it's time now to meet our chief guest on Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Our chief guest has appeared on SSTP on 2 occasions so far, and I thank him for readily accepting our invitation to come on today's program. He is a gentleman who really needs no introduction. My chief guest is a household name in Fiji, and his fame and fortune has spread far and wide. A former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, and the person who will lead his team of 54 candidates towards Election Day on 14th December 2022. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the leader of the Unity Fiji Party, Mr. Savenaca Narube. Sir, good morning to you, and good afternoon in Fiji. Nisam Bulavinaka, welcome to SSTP, Mr. Narube.
Yeah, thank you, Shashi. It's great to be back on your program today, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion on many of the issues that the country faces as we head towards the elections on the 14th of December. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure having you on SSTP. Welcome back. Let me begin today's episode 43 by asking you about the campaign period. Now, this has been a first in Fiji's history. The campaign started in late April this year and has been an extremely long one. How would you describe the campaign period, Mr. Narube, and what has been the effects of such a long campaign?
Thank you. Yeah, you are right. The campaign was officially announced on, I believe, the 26th of April. So that was over 6 months ago. Unity Fiji team has been out there since last year, well before that. So it's been a very, very long campaign. And the uncertainty made it worse that we didn't know the date of the election. But
Right.
such is the situation that we face, a government that has politicized this election date. Fortunately for us, we have been able not only to endure the long campaign, but I think we have thrived during the campaign due mainly to a few factors. The first, we have a very committed, dedicated team of campaigners, supporters, and provisional candidates. They're quite motivated to change the injustice that we face. The second, I think, is just the respect and the teamwork that the teams have for each other. In a long period of campaign, differences do arise. We all know that. But we have been able to work through this amongst ourselves with the goodwill of our team and soldier on. The last is our strong belief in this mission. That is extremely important to us. That many of us on this campaign regard it as our calling to execute this plan that God has for Fiji. So, yes, for us, the burdens have been few. The first is just finance.
Right.
As the length of this campaign drags on, it becomes very expensive. And campaign Fiji style, as you know, Sashi, is absolutely expensive. There's social media, but we
Yes.
have to go out on face-to-face meetings in Fiji. That's still essential for our voters. And the most expensive campaign items on that particular campaign strategy is just fuel and grog in Fiji. The other burden that or big issue that we are facing is the independence of the media. I think I raised this in our previous interview. One of the major issues in election, the media. The role of the media is quite important, but we have to work extremely hard to get media coverage. We know some of the media, this is not a secret, are not independent. And even those that are independent seem to already have some favorites. So we are surprised as we roll out issues that what we think is of immense national interest are not even carried. So we thank God for the social media. Thank you.
Now, a long campaign period, and then on top of that, you have that electoral act, which is just hanging over your head. Has
Yeah.
this placed a greater burden on how the campaign has been conducted?
Absolutely.
The fear that comes with it.
Yeah. This is what we have been trying to explain to a lot of people, particularly the international community. It's not only the process of the election date, it is the environment behind it. And this is where I think there needs to be a lot more understanding of the democracy that we face in this country. As I've always said, the trap has been set for opposition parties. A special high court has been put aside to accelerate any prosecution. The election laws have been changed in the last 18 months to make it much more difficult for opposition parties to virtually do anything. And you mentioned it, you mentioned the element of fear. We see that manifest itself in many ways in Fiji. We see that in the acceptance of our candidates. They tend to be fearful that if they come up and support another party, they run the risks of government getting up after them. So that to us create that environment that doesn't promote this fair and free election that we should have. So it is a very complex situation. This country haven't faced that situation in the past, and we have to navigate that in this long campaign period.
I really take off my hat to all the opposition parties who have just endured through this very long and arduous campaign period to just sort of hang in there with their supporters with all the elements that surrounds the Electoral Act and FICAC, etc. Well done to you and to all the other opposition leaders who've kept their parties intact. Now, Mr. Narube, on Friday, just last Friday, the 4th of November, you launched your Unity Fiji Party's 2022 manifesto. At the launch, you said that, and I quote, "The manifesto is the embodiment of our vision for this country now and into the medium term." End of quote. We will shortly dissect the manifesto, but firstly, just in a nutshell, what is your manifesto?
Yeah, thank you, Shashi. We all know how difficult lives are in Fiji now. And the future seems really hopeless and gloomy for many of us. To me, what hurts me most is the abuse of our rights and freedom. The climate of fear that we just talked about, the intimidation, the harassment. And I believe, and I certainly urge the voters, that we should not vote for a government that hurts us and frightens us, whatever is the other track record of government, which is not great as well. So that's why we say, despite the tyranny that we face, we must cling to that hope. We must have hope. And I mentioned, where there is breath, there must be hope. We must not lose hope. So in a nutshell, this manifesto gives us hope that we can restore the economy, hope that we can stabilize our finances, hope that we can draw back poverty, and hope that liberates us from the chains of tyranny. So that's why we are calling our manifesto the restoration of hope and freedoms.
Well, wonderfully said. That's the foundation of restoring hope and freedoms. So could you just elaborate a bit more on that? How would you then restore hope and freedom?
Yeah. As I said, we restore hope in the economy. And we have an economic package there. We restore hope on our finances. And we have issues of slowing down our growth in debt. We have hope to solve our poverty. So we have that as our major top priority. And our plan to really get back and restore the freedoms that this wonderful country should have.
Well said. Now, talking of hope, your manifesto looked at what you call the pyramid of hope. Now, what is the pyramid of hope? And I believe it is based on 3 pillars that you espoused. Please talk about that.
Yes, it's based on 3 pillars. The first one is trust. The level of trust as we go around the country, we hear on trust in politicians is extremely low. People are just distrustful of politicians. And I can't blame them, because we see politicians that just get what they want and forget about the people. They line their own pockets. They lie to us. Some tell me that politics is a dirty game, Shashi. I tell them it should not be. It's up to those that are in there, whether it's a dirty or a cleaner game. So trust must be earned. I believe that we have earned that trust of the people by our clean and honest leadership. People have had enough of past politicians, Shashi. They want a leadership that they can trust. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is certainty. Certainty covers a few issues. The first, you must articulate to the people a clear vision. To be able to articulate a clear vision, you need to know those issues and understand the dynamics, the roots of those issues. The second in the certainty, in the second pillar, is you must share this vision with the people. And people will work better with you when they know and share your vision of the country. And the last pillar is just people first. This is the party's motto. We developed that motto when we realized that politicians tend to look after themselves first. So it involves a few things too. First, we must listen to the people. before you can put them first. You must listen to the people. Second, we'll work with the people to find solutions. So when we put the people's interests first, our leadership is very transparent, clean, and effective. So those are the three pillars in our leadership hope, in the pyramid of hope.
Pyramid of Hope.
Yeah.
All right. So you've mentioned trust, certainty, and people first in the Pyramid of Hope. Now, reading your manifesto, I read that it's organized around 4 pillars in terms of the organization of the manifesto. May I please request you to discuss those 4 pillars?
Yeah, we decided to draw all the measures into these 4 pillars. So they come under these 4, and we can articulate, at least at the higher level, those 4 pillars first. There are many individual measures under each of those 4 pillars. The 4 pillars is reducing poverty, rights to services and freedoms, elimination of corruption, and the last one is healing the wounds of the past. We feel that those 3 pillars adequately cover all the issues and the challenges that this country is facing right now.
Wonderfully said. I will spend time with you this afternoon, Fiji time, in discussing in a lot more detail those 4 pillars. They're important for discussion. So let's begin. Poverty. Poverty is currently the biggest problem that Fiji is facing today. Now, you said in the manifesto that poverty was at 50%. I respect that. Some experts on this program who've appeared as guests have put poverty levels as high as 50%. Now, how do you, Mr. Narube, measure the level of poverty in the country?
Yeah, it is a very complex technical measurement of poverty. It is scientifically measured, but it covers these broad steps. You first estimate the minimum daily needs of an average person in Fiji. And that's quite easier to do. And cost these needs. The second step, you cost them. And this costing becomes what we call the basic poverty line. And it is calculated at $42 per week. Then the hardest part is you do a survey of the incomes of households in Fiji and compare them with this basic poverty line. And this was done by the Bureau of Statistics. It's the only one that perhaps can do it. And it was done before the pandemic. And they estimated that at 30% of the population lives under poverty. So for us, we have taken that as the base, and then look at the cost of living that has risen quite fast after in the last year. So with that cost of living, that increases the cost of those needs. So basically the poverty line is shifting upwards. So instead of $42 per week, it becomes, in our calculation, around $45 per week. So, and then you kind of project the incomes of the household in Fiji, which basically has not just remained stable, it's perhaps have fallen. So a combination of those 2 factors, the rise in the cost of living and the stagnation or the decline in the incomes of the household. That's why we think that poverty is around 40%. For those that say 50%, I cannot argue with that. You know, it's quite a serious issue, and it was already worsening before the pandemic, Shashi.
Yes, indeed.
Since the pandemic, it was worsening because before the pandemic, the government, as I mentioned in the launch, was throwing peanuts at us while buttering up the rich. who in turn donate to the Fiji First Party. So the poor were getting poorer, while the rich were getting richer. And as a result, poverty is exploding. We don't have to be a scientist, I guess, to understand poverty in any country, including Fiji. The signs are everywhere. They are on our streets. They are in our homes. They are in our schools. They are in our villages and settlements. So one thing for sure, it is not declining as the government claims it is. It is increasing. Thank you.
I will come back and discuss in a short while the cost of living issues, but sticking with poverty, um, you've told us how it's measured. Now, my question is: to what do you attribute the reasons for the rise in poverty levels in Fiji? You've just mentioned
Hmm.
the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. But
Yeah.
what are some of the reasons, Mr. Narube, for the rise in poverty levels?
There are three reasons. It is the wrong policy of government. As I said, its policies tend to favor the rich rather than the poor. The second is the escalating cost of living. And the third is the incomes that are stagnant. Our growth in GDP has been declining in aggregate in the last 3 years to the tune of over 25%. So a combination of those three factors: the policies of government, the rise in the cost of living, and the decline in incomes.
Let me then ask you, what is the miracle cure for poverty? What are the solutions?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, firstly, in our manifesto, our first step to reducing poverty is just to place the economy on the right foundation. And that addresses the income side, the employment, the jobs on that side of the ledger. So we are calling this foundation, new foundation, to get there is the Economic Transformation Program, for short ETP. It is built on the backbone of our natural resources. That's the secret to our economic success here in Fiji. Our success won't come from abroad. It's here in Fiji. It's right here with us. And the secret, as we all know, we see it every day, is our natural resources. And the whole of the government, including past governments, have miserably failed in our efforts to utilize our natural resources. Why? Because I believe our past efforts have been quite inadequate. It's been piecemeal. We just look at production. We don't look at the other chains in that process. And it's fragmented. Sometimes we put the blame on the resource owners. They're lazy. And I think that's not true. I think we must lay the blame of our failures to address poverty squarely at the feet of governments. So our previous efforts have not empowered the resource owners. They have not provided the capacity to the resource owners, the capital, and they have not changed our mindset. That is, to me, the economic transformation program tries to address. And I sent a slide which you could use at this time. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going to take you down your manifesto step by step. We'll come to your economic transformation package shortly. And I can assure you, we'll also discuss the issue of resources, etc., and how best it can be managed. But right now, let's
Mhm.
talk about let's talk about sharing the burden of the cost of living. Now, if the level of poverty in Fiji was not bad enough, the enormity of the cost of living crisis has had a huge, huge effect on the day to day lives of the ordinary people, the everyday mums and dads. Let me please ask you first up, Mr. Narube, where do you see the imbalance? Can this be attributed to an imbalance in the population, for instance?
Yeah, as you know, we emerged out of the pandemic only to be blindsided by the cost of living. And my view is that the burden of the higher cost of living is just simply passed on to the people in full. And as a result, it hits the poor the most because they don't have the resources to defend themselves. So to me, it's unfair. It's not right just to let the poor people shoulder it themselves. So that's where the imbalance is. The rich, okay. So we must rebalance that. The corporate sector, the private sector needs to come in with their share. The government will have to come in with its share. So that's why we think it's a mismatch or imbalance in the burden of cost of living. The cost of living is coming from offshore, but we must share that burden. So we think that rebalancing must happen.
Now, your manifesto states that you will attack the higher cost of living on two fronts. Please explain what is your plan of attack.
Yeah. Our first front, just put more money into people's pockets so they can at least afford some of these essential items in their lives. And second, why don't we reduce the cost of imported goods? Those are the two fronts that I mentioned. And in putting more money into people's hands, we have announced a few measures there. We'll raise the income tax threshold from 30,000 currently to 40,000. Furthermore, we'll reduce the income taxes for those earning between $40,000 and $50,000. Now, we think we should rebalance that those revenue that will be lost from government. So we'll recover that, the giveaways, by raising what we call the social responsibility taxes and introducing a progressive corporate tax structure. So that will, the balancing of that. More money to the poor paid for by those that can afford it. And the next one is introduce a living wage at $5 an hour. And people will say, okay, what about small businesses? I say, okay, we'll help small businesses by offering them tax rebates and staggering the implementation of that living wage. And another one is that we'll raise the cane price to $110, I'm sorry, at a ton. And also the retirement age. We want to move it to 60. And we want to index the senior citizen allowances to inflation.
Okay.
So those are the measures that we have.
All right. You've provided a very good summary of that. And I will, as we proceed with this interview, come and ask you specific questions about those programs. Let me now change the subject to address education needs. What is Unity Fiji's plans for the education sector, Mr. Narube?
Yeah, we're folding in education into this plan for poverty reduction, because we all know that education is the key out of intergenerational poverty. So the Unity Fiji government will continue with the current assistance given to primary and secondary school students. But we would like to equalize the opportunity for the tertiary education students. And we are offering two measures here. One is will grant free education up to tertiary level. Because we believe that education is a right and not a privilege. The opportunity for students to get the maximum education to tertiary must not be limited by the incomes of the parents. And that's exactly what's happening now. And we'll forgive the second issue, we'll forgive all debt currently owed by the TEL students. And it's only fair to do this under this new free education system. And we believe both this will empower our youth to get on with their lives. Let me just mention here that we announced the above measures on tertiary education back in 2018 in our manifesto. And we are glad that some political parties now have taken it up. Thank you.
So just to say, your manifesto does say that you'll wipe off all the TELS debt.
Correct.
Okay. Now, by announcing the measures of free education up to tertiary level, what do you think will be the result? How will young people benefit? Very important to know that.
Yeah, on the tertiary level, more students will be able to enroll that they couldn't enroll before. More people will come back where they have left studies before because they couldn't pay. So they will give them opportunity to get the maximum qualification that they can. And that's a big empowerment, isn't it, to our
Well,
youth?
it certainly is. Certainly is, because there's no limits to education. That is always a learning process, never stops.
Hmm.
Have a break, Mr. Narube. Have a drink of water. I'll
Sure.
come back to you in just a moment to discuss matters of health. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and our chief guest today is Mr. Savenaca Narube, leader of the Unity Fiji Party and former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji. Please like and share the SSTP page on your own timelines so that we may share this broadcast with as many people as possible. Now, here on SSTP, Mr. Narube, we have raised with many of our past guests the chronic situation of Fiji's health service, from lack of essential equipment, lack of essential medicines, lack of adequate professionals, to lack of beds, you name it. And
Hmm.
also the old and miserable state of some of our hospitals. Only in the last few days, there have been some photo opportunities to show that open heart surgery is now being performed by Aspen Medical in the Lautoka Hospital. Mr. Narube, how big a priority is the health services to you and your party?
Oh, it's pretty big. All the indicators of our health services that you just mentioned, we all experiencing it. It is right, it's really chronic. And we have heard evidences from people that they have even lost loved ones because of what they believe are the lack in our hospitals and healthcare. You know, we go to hospital, particularly here in Suva, we can witness it from afar. We just look at the state of the building. And please, if you go inside, then these indicators will just hit us in the face. So yes, it's quite important in our priority to lift our health services. And unfortunately, this has not been done. And we noted that in the last budget, the Minister for the Economy reduced the health budget, but increased the military budget. So this again is priorities. And this is where this government, I think, has fallen quite short of what it should do. So we will raise the priority of health, and we will allocate an additional $200 million to health, to fund the improvement in infrastructure, the provisions of medicines, staff, and we are including in there higher subsidy for kidney dialysis. Kidney dialysis cases came to us. It is quite tragic that people because they don't have incomes, are just told to go home and wait to die. This cannot be happening here. So we are increasing that allocation to health to buy an additional $200 million a year.
That's wonderful news indeed for the people of Fiji and for all those working in the health sector. Let's face it, with all the problems that Fiji's having, we must pay. We must pay tribute, I guess, or we must thank the hardworking personnel of the Fijian health services. They work under extreme conditions, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on that, sir.
Yep, fully agree.
Wonderful. Let's move on. Let's discuss water. As they say, water everywhere except in our taps. It's an everyday problem in Fiji, the supply of clean and reliable water supply to the people. We have had disruptions to the daily water supply. Now, let me tell you, so much so that some young people who have grown up with disruptions in the water supply, they have not known any better. They think that daily disruptions to the water supply is a normal way of life for them. Let me say to you, in your manifesto, what are your plans to improve water supply in the country?
Yeah, we have the Fiji Water Authority, if I think that's their right name, that does that for the government. And we really, they are allocated quite a lot of money. And like the Fiji Roads Authority, we're asking the question, where is this money flowing to? We have been campaigning across Fiji, and just next year to Nosori, they have faced water disruptions. No, wait for it, for over a year, where they come in intermittently, open the water, and then cut it off daily. So they are struggling with this. And this is just outside Nosori. And these are multiplied manifolds as you go out into the interior of Fiji. The results that we should be getting from the allocation to water is not being produced. So that's why we really need to reform these organizations. Some of them are top heavy. And we need to look at how are you spending our money on water, on roads. So for us, we really don't know what are the issues. Perhaps the infrastructure is aging, that needs to be replaced. And we are allocating an additional 50 million to improve water supply. Our promise to the people is within 4 years, all citizens will have access to clean and reliable water. That is our undertaking. Thank you.
So, an additional 50 million to improve the water supply to the people.
Yes.
All right. You mentioned a short while ago, you touched on natural resources. As we know, Fiji is a beautiful country, and it also has its own fair share of natural resources. By
Yes.
any standard of measure, it seems that we have failed badly in exploiting our natural resources. Why have we failed this badly, Mr. Narube?
Yeah, I think if you look back at the past, uh, our model of assistance has been wrong. Firstly, they have been inadequate. They're piecemeal, as I mentioned earlier, and they just look at a component in that supply chain. And that's what I believe that has been why we have failed. We have failed badly because we have been looking to in my view, at small, inefficient farming. And I think we really now need to break out of that. Break out from that small, inefficient farming to more commercially based farming and development of our resources. I showed in our launch some of the industries in this area, which is timber, agriculture, and I think the other one was mining. They have all come down very significantly in the last 15, 16 years. So that's where we are. And I don't see any effort by this government to try to revive or grow this resource-based industry. We are going to do that. In fact, that's the backbone of our economic transformation. Thank you.
We'll come to the economic transformation program in just a moment. You've mentioned, interestingly, I remember as I was growing up, for example, the Emperor gold mines. Gold was a good income earner for Fiji, even in those days. Talking about such natural resources, Mr. Narube, what is the impact? What is the impact of this failure?
It is impacted not only the corporate sector that is in there, but the lives of people that are in the resource-based sector, and that is the landowners, the tenants, and other people around it. So that is contributing to the rural poverty that we have encountered. And if we want to eradicate that, we must solve this particular sector. So the impact is in jobs, in incomes, and the result is poverty.
And that is the solution then, to best utilize the natural resources that we have.
Yep.
All right, now we'll come to what you term the Economic Transformation Program. Let us look at the implementation of some of the components of the ETP. This will be a difficult task, no doubt. Now, I have a series of questions, but firstly, would you like me to put up that chart of yours on the screen at this point in time?
Yes, please.
All right, if we can have that on the screen, we'll share that on the screen, and I'll get you to explain that, Mr. Narube, in your own time now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As you will see in that screen, there are a few boxes in the middle, and that's production on the left, value adding in the middle, and the markets at the right. And this is the integration I was talking about. We need to integrate those three components of this program. In the past, that's where I believe they have fallen down. The efforts in the past to strengthen this sector has fallen badly because there's been lack of integration. So let's look at production, which is the left side of it. And the Unity Fiji government will provide machines and technical training that allows the use of resources to move from a subsistence to a commercial level. So when you move to a commercial level, forks, spades, and knives that has been provided to them is not essential. It is time for them to be provided diggers, tractors, and machines to grow out to a commercial production level. And on top of that, we have the technology that we need to introduce at that level. A lot of education, a lot of training for that to happen. So to lift that incomes from that production, we lift production to maximize incomes there. We establishing processing centers across the country. That's the center part of that chain. So we'll take these centers to where the resources are, rather than what we are doing right now. And these centers must be owned or partially owned by the producers themselves. That makes a lot of difference. So they maximize their income from it. And again, at the end of it, this value-added products must be sold. So Unity Fiji government will help locate overseas markets, which will help raise exports and increase foreign exchange. That is the value chain that we need to put in place. And to lubricate that value chain, we provide capital, which is the red circle below that. and we will establish a resource utilization bank dedicated to financing the utilization of natural resources. The requirements of financing these natural resources are slightly different from what we normally are used to in commercial banking. So it needs special skills there, special processes, and so forth. So that's why we think they need to have a dedicated commercial bank for that. The other is the control of these resources by the owners, and we will reverse the laws that have removed this control of natural resources.
All right.
Bill 17 was one of that. And finally, at the top of that is another red circle, which is called mindsets. To me, that is the most difficult thing in this program, but it's essential. It's a prerequisite to the success of this economic transformation program. It's a difficult thing to do. No government has tried to do it, but we need to address it now. So we'll ask the chiefs to spearhead that and the churches to also help out. So that in a nutshell, Shashi, is what we are calling the economic transformation program.
Two questions that I have out of what we've just seen on the screen. First one, do you think your plans will succeed?
Oh, yes. As I said, we will learn from the mistakes of the past, and we'll correct that. We'll make it integrated. We'll empower the resource owners by providing capital, technical know-how, training, and so forth, and molding that mindset. So with that, we're certainly very confident that it will succeed.
I applaud your confidence. Now, at the bottom of that chart we saw was capital. Capital. That is the all-important money. How much of capital investment do you think will be required to carry out this project?
Yeah, capital on its own is not the answer. We really need to do that change in mindsets that will protect this capital. We really need to look at the structure that lies behind production, value adding, to ensure that it's protected. We don't throw capitals out in this program. So it'll be a very structured, commercially based approach. How much? Of course, we'll put it by phases. It not be in one go. So for us, the first year of this will basically be taken up by preparing the framework, undertaking studies, setting up structures. So we estimate the cost in the first year at $200 million. And we hope to interest donors in supporting this program. This is the heart of the new economy in Fiji.
Okay. I'm going to address a very important question right towards the end in relation to money. I'll save that for you. Now, you've mentioned 2 or 3 times change in the mindset. Now, that's a very, very important concept. Mr. Narube, how will you change the mindset of stakeholders, especially that of our indigenous resource owners? I mean, as you know, and I know, in the past, resource owners, our natural resources, have felt shortchanged. But how do you then go about changing that mindset?
Yeah, as I said, in any change program, you need an incentive. They must see that incentive. And that incentive is, of course, the livelihoods that they will get from such a change. And here you will have role models of it. So we will roll out these things on what do you call it? on establishing one, moving on to the next. So it becomes a rolling role models for that. When they see others succeeding, when they see others with better lives, that is a very powerful incentive in this. And that hasn't been done before. So we know this will revolutionize Fiji's economy. First, it will rebase the economy on a foundation that we can control and one that doesn't increase our debt. Mm-hmm. And second, it's inclusive. We're talking for land resource owners, but it can be used by anyone, the tenants in the resource that owns resources, and sugarcane farmers included. So it's quite a big, very inclusive program, and it will provide many jobs to school leavers that are out there in the villages and settlements. And more very importantly, you start to raise that income in the rural areas. When they see that happening, it will motivate them. So this where this program is much different from any other. We provide the incentives, empower them to resource owners, and I'm sure with the help of the chiefs, the churches, change the mindset. This will make it successful.
All right. Now, a short while ago, you spoke about tax reforms. Your manifesto has very interestingly discussed a revolutionary tax reform package. You touched on this, but let me ask you, what is the rationale and the impact of this for Fijians?
Obviously, take-home pay will increase. And that's what I mentioned. Put more money into people's pockets. And when there's less tax, what happens? More money in their pocket, but somebody is missing. Somebody is with less money. Who is it? Government. Okay? So that's why we give on one hand and we take on the other. So that's the rationale behind that. So as you will see, we're giving away the income tax to the poor and those that are lower income, 50,000 and below. But we are recovering that by temporarily raising the social responsibility taxes and the corporate tax. So that is the rebalancing. And if you increase the living wage to $5 an hour, that again, it gives money to the people. Cane prices at $110 a ton. Again, that gives money to the people. So that's what we aim to do, to rebalance this income in the country.
Two questions. If Unity Fiji Party forms government, how soon will you implement the $5 an hour minimum wage? And I know you've touched on this a little while ago, but I'd like to ask you, how will it affect the small to medium enterprises?
Yeah, wages cut both ways. The wages, higher wages will be good for workers, employers, but business must get that money from somewhere. So I mentioned before the minimum or the poverty line, the basic poverty line at $42 a week. Mm-hmm. So that $5 goes towards partially reducing that gap, not fully. So there still be a gap of this $5 an hour to the poverty line. So, but we are heading in that direction. We are recognizing that. And to help small businesses, because they will have to pay this higher minimum wages, we are thinking of offering tax rebates to them.
All right.
And these tax rebates work that way. They pay less taxes. Okay? And we also will be looking at staggering the implementation of $5 an hour, perhaps to favor small businesses. So that's how we are balancing the books.
Okay. You mentioned something very interesting, and I'd like to raise that now, the matter of retirees. Now, some of the retirees have been hard done by the monies that they had saved for a rainy day in the FNPF.
Mm.
Now, I've got some friends, schoolmates in Fiji. The retirement age, of course, is 55. And some of my friends have been hard done by with their savings in FNPF. Your
Yeah.
manifesto has planned to index senior citizen allowances to inflation. How
Mm.
is this going to be executed?
Oh, simple. Take a measure of inflation that you think is relevant, and every year, as inflation rises, the senior citizens allowances rise with it.
Mhm. Okay.
So, and the second is the retirement age. You referred to that, and we're moving it to 60. All over the world, retirement ages are getting higher. And in Fiji, where our pool of experienced people are very small, we need to move likewise. And that's where we are moving. So, yeah, lifting the no job and no job policy, remove that. We'll get more people into the work streams, and then on the senior citizen allowances and those above 60, that will also help.
So you will remove the no jab, no job policy.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Now, during the onslaught of COVID-19 pandemic, many people had lost their jobs, and many had to survive by withdrawing on their FNPF savings. Now, there has been many a tear shed because of this. Now, the Unity Fiji Party, I've read in your manifesto, you've made a commitment to reimburse COVID-19 related FNPF withdrawals. Firstly, why are you doing this, sir?
Exactly as you have just said, Shashi. You know, this is an unprecedented crisis that we came through. It is hit us like a tornado, and the least that the people could do is to rely on government. But what did the government do? They said, "Don't rely on us. Go to your savings at the FNPF." Those savings are dedicated for retirement. That's the purpose of FNPF. So, to me, in my view, the government failed badly in not helping the people during that time from our taxes. So that's why we're trying to kind of adjust to that, and we will reimburse the COVID withdrawals from FNPF for those earning below $40,000, and
Mhm.
that's the reason.
All right. And what is the cost going to be when you do this?
As I said, estimating the cost, we have to rely on our own projections. We don't have official figures from FNPF or from FERCA. So we are estimating $50 million.
Okay. Now, one of your most ambitious items in the manifesto, in terms of reducing the cost of imported inflation, you say, will be to reduce the profit margins of fuel companies. Why would you do this, and are fuel companies not operating in a free market economy?
Oh, absolutely. They are in the free market. And we in the free market, we are facing this higher cost of living, mostly in fuel prices. So what happens is this: fuel prices or fuel is under price control. At the end of each month or each quarter, uh, the fuel companies or the oil companies apply to the Ministry of Economy to review the fuel prices. And in that template is a margin. It's a margin that government allows the fuel companies to operate on,
Mhm.
and that determines the cost of fuel. But we are saying, why don't we look at that margin just for now? So because the price of fuel is affecting everything in any country, It affects bus fares, taxi fares, everything else. So it has a big impact on the economy. And we will be asking the fuel companies, we need to review that margin in that template. Reduce it temporarily so the pass on price increase to the companies and to individuals, the people, are less. That's the rationale. We need to share this burden. Everybody, including oil companies.
All right, take a little break, have a sip of water. We'll come back and we'll talk about fiscal responsibility. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and our chief guest this afternoon is Mr. Savenaca Narube, leader of the Unity Fiji Party and former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji. Please like and share the SSTP page on your own timelines so that we may share this broadcast with as many people as possible. And let me remind you that if you're a new viewer of SSTP, if you've recently joined SSTP, you can go to the Facebook page of SSTP or on YouTube and catch up on all the past programs from episode 1 to this current program, which is episode 43. And all the programs are there in the archives on Facebook and on YouTube. Mr. Narumbe, I would now like to shift our discussions to that of fiscal responsibilities. There are many that hold very, very strong views that the current government has been financially irresponsible. We currently have debt levels as high as $10 billion or $12 billion, and we are told it is smart borrowing. Mr. Narumbe, even when you have appeared on SSTP on 2 occasions and in other forums, you've talked a lot about fiscal responsibility. Firstly, what do you mean by this?
Yeah, I guess fiscal responsibility is a wide issue, but fundamentally it says that you must stabilize government finance at all times, and that means that stabilization means that you must have a debt that is sustainable. That is my definition of fiscal responsibility. In putting that fiscal financial responsibility to us, it means to have a debt that is sustainable. You need to work backwards. You need to work backwards to your expenses, to your expenses. How well are you managing the expenses? And then look at the efficiency of your operation. Look at the priorities of the budget, because we have limited resources. We cannot spend as much money as we want to. So that limits us. So when you do those backroom work on expenses, efficiencies, and priorities, you then lead to a more responsible debt position. Now, that hasn't happened, has it?
No.
National debt is nearly 100% of GDP, which means that really this country is surviving on borrowing, basically. And
True.
who are we to blame? Again, we have no one else to blame, not the external sector, not the borrowers, not the lenders, but we, the government. They have been financially irresponsible. And I mentioned in our launch that a few things. First, a first-year economic student will tell us that we cannot build growth on government spending. In a country such as Fiji, I've mentioned this, but growth in the last 16 years, the banana boom, Bainimarama boom, and so forth, has been based on government spending. You can't do that. And a seventh form student will tell us that you cannot waste taxpayers' money on political spending. And again, priorities are the core of any budgeting. So that's fiscal responsibility.
All right. Now, I'm going to let you explain how Unity Fiji will improve fiscal responsibility. With your permission, I've taken a slide from your manifesto. I'd like to put that on the screen
Sure.
because I think that will make a lot more sense as far as your explanation goes. So, if we can please have that slide. So, this is what you call the fiscal responsibility gears. So, please explain how Unity Fiji will improve fiscal responsibility, Mr. Narube.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that slide. It really helps explain what we mean by our approach to fiscal responsibility. We must start with the bigger wheel, the red one, and we start at reforming expenditures. And this government has refused to do that. And here we will drive efficiency in government operations and remove wastages. We have tools for that. We have tools like zero-based budgeting, public expenditure reviews. But simple reviews of ministries will bring out these efficiency gains. We have gone into details into each ministry and identified over $1 billion in savings and efficiency gains. This is in 1 year, Sash.
Yes.
Imagine if we had saved that $1 billion in the last 16 years. We would have saved us 14 or more billion dollars in this savings. So we have identified where those savings come from. We have worked very hard. We've looked at vehicles transferred to government companies, infrastructure, missions abroad, and a few more. So that's the first part of it. The second part, which is the smaller wheel, is that we do not save the money that we have saved from government, the $1 billion that I mentioned, but to reallocate that. So the second wheel is a reallocated wheel to those of higher priorities. And this is like what I was mentioning: health, education, housing, law and order. So this reallocation is necessary to correct the failures of this government. Otherwise, we would have saved that $1 billion. Okay? And the last one, at the end or at the top, is that we achieve what I call fiscal responsibilities outcomes, which means that the impact of government spending on the economy increases value for money. So the economy starts to churn, jobs start to grow, the ETP starts to work, and over time, government reduces its borrowing requirements. That's how it works.
Can I get the screen off now, or do you need
go
that?
ahead. Yeah.
All right. So I find it absolutely mind-boggling. Here you have your party's document, your party's manifesto, and you've identified wastage in terms of over $1 billion. Now, in anyone's book, this would be political suicide. This would be political mismanagement. Now, tell me, how would you then prioritize? Like you said, a seventh form student would tell you how to do things. An experienced economist will tell us that budgeting is all about right priorities. What then are your right priorities?
Yeah, thanks. Right now, it is health. So we're plowing 200 million of that savings back to health. Okay. And second, it is what we ourselves are calling the housing crisis. And you haven't asked me about housing.
I'm coming to that right next. That's my next topic.
Is another huge area for us, housing. And then we also have education, our free education up to tertiary level, and also law and order. Those are the priorities we feel. There are a lot of priorities, but I think those are the 5 that we'll concentrate on.
All right. Now, how long do you think it will take to bring the debt level down to acceptable levels?
Yeah, 6 years.
Okay.
6 years.
So,
And
six,
that's based on the economic projection of our ETP taking hold of the economy and driving our outputs and our redistribution of that towards the poor. And that will take, in our calculation, 6 years to get back debt to GDP ratio to about 50% of GDP.
that will, of course, require a lot of hard work to get the country to some sort of an even keel in terms of that debt ratio.
Yeah,
That's
in
a huge
coming
target.
down to that ratio, make sure that the economy doesn't suffer. So you grow the economy rather than suppress it by suppressing government spending.
All
So
right.
you allow the economy to increase, improve, and then you readjust that within that time period.
Let us now shift our focus to the housing crisis. In a paper titled Intervention in the Fijian Low Income Housing Sector Challenges, Partners, and Prospects, written by Gabriel Luke Kiddles. And it said, and I quote, in Fiji, where urban dwellers now outnumber those in rural areas, squatter informal settlements now house upwards of 140,000 people. As urbanization continues, low wages, growing poverty, expiry of rural land leases, and an inadequate supply of affordable housing in urban areas combine to create a growing low income housing crisis. Now, as of 2018, an estimated 20% of the total population was squatting. The squatter settlement situation is obviously much worse now. I've read that in 2017, as early as 2017, you had raised the issue of the housing crisis. Now, in your manifesto, you've raised the priority of housing. Please explain that priority to us, Mr. Narube.
Absolutely. I think that report sums it up very well. Housing is a basic need that we haven't provided for quite a long time. No? And we put out those figures in our manifesto that says in the last 15 years, this government has spent $191 million on housing. Okay? And we are comparing that to the $4 billion spent on the discipline forces. That's just for comparison, not saying anything else. So the average of government spending per year is only $12 million on housing. That's why we see the housing problems mushrooming around the urban centers. I have been to the informal housing settlements around here in Suva. Oh, that has opened my eyes. Oh, it is really terrible. And for me, I can't fathom why a government allows these people to live in those conditions. That's just, to me, unbelievable. So housing is a big issue here. We know what has happened in Veresi. It's a part of Suva.
Yes.
That the owner of the land had just come up and plowed, destroyed all the houses that were there. That's the kind of issues that will happen a lot in Fiji if we do not take care of this. And who lives in this kind of housing? These are the people that are struggling every day. And we are turning a blind eye to this. Well, Unity Fiji government will not turn a blind eye to this anymore. We'll raise the priority housing and we'll allocate $100 million a year to housing, which is 500% more than the current year's $20 million. The budget has only $20 million. We will increase that to $100 million a year. And we'll construct 1,000 homes, at least 1,000 homes per year, and we'll include that in the relocation of informal settlements and also rural housing. So that's it. We must address this very, very important issue of housing. Thank you.
All right. That is quite an ambitious project. And people are living, as you said right at the beginning, in dire poverty state. And then, of course, the housing crisis just adds to the burden. So it is something that governments should take account of and try to better the lives of people. Let me shift the subject now. As you and I both know, Fiji has had its fair share of political upheavals, political turmoil, and this has come at a great cost to the country. Some in the past have blamed the coups on the disparities between the two major races in the country. Your manifesto has touched on the issue of income parity, and you have said that this will reduce political crisis in Fiji. I find that interesting. Please explain, what do you mean by this?
Yeah, thank you. I think if you look back at our past crisis, there's been reasons given to it. But underlying those reasons may be true or not, we don't know, of our coups. But underlying that, people have been used as tools for political ends. And if you step back and say, why are people asking to be used or agreeing to be used? You look back, and I think economic is at the roots of this. Finance and economic. So I think, to me, if we want national unity, we must build that parity up. So there are many people that have suffered from past political crises. So we are paying for that crisis. That's one of the reasons I've been asking voters in Fiji, please return the country to a civilian-led government. And it's resonating. Well, that's probably I'm the first one that has placed it very high in the profile of this election. So I think that's the thing. We need to lift that parity, improve it. And that, to me, will help bring in that political stability and avoid future crisis. There's a big, whether we like it or not, there's a big differences between the indigenous population and the other Fijians here in this country. We need to lift that. We need to change that. And that's what we address. We're going to the deep end here. And we need to do that. Otherwise, we're just talking about the surface. We're not getting to the roots of it.
Now, you've also said that to build lasting peace, the Unity Fiji government will rebalance the ethnic distribution of senior positions and boards in the public sector. How will you do this?
Well, the implementation is simple, because government is the appointing authority. You appoint those people. I think some people will disagree with this and say, no, this is against the spirit of Fiji one people. But I think within that people, within that whole of the population, there are ethnic groups in it. And whether we like it or not, these ethnic groups have interests. And if these ethnic groups, particularly if it's a big one, looks at their parity in this environment, they will say, they are asking already, why is it imbalanced? Don't we have the skills? Don't we have the qualification? So that's what we need to address. We cannot build national unity through artificial things. These are the building blocks of national unity. So we will go to that building block. We will see a rebalancing of ethnic groups in the appointments of senior positions. I think we really need to do that, and we will start doing that in our manifesto.
Your manifesto has stated that Unity Fiji government will establish a National Security Commission. Please explain the purpose of the National Security Commission.
Yeah, as we have been talking about, this political crisis that we have come through. We've had 4 coups in this small island. We're suffering from that coup. We'll continue to suffer. We can put a blanket around it and forget about it, but I think the impact of it still permeates through our communities and societies. So, to me, there are many issues there. We can talk about those issues. Some of those issues are hidden. And if we're really, really serious about our national security, we need to bring those issues up onto the table and start discussing them. So we are going to consult very, very widely with all stakeholders, including the discipline forces, to establish a terms of reference for this National Security Commission. And to me, one of their major objectives is try to avoid future political crisis. So that's our wedge into addressing some of these sensitive and maybe very deep issues in our political situation here in Fiji. Because if we don't do it, it's bound to come and attack us again in future. Thank you.
Regarding the National Security Commission, how would that be appointed? Would that be a government appointee, or would that commission, well, you tell me, how would that be selected, whatever it is?
Yeah, commissions, they come in different forms, different authorities. The word commission kind of gives it a lot more power than just a committee or group. It gives you a little bit of legal power. So that means that such commissions will need to be appointed by Parliament. And the composition would have to be looked at very, very carefully, but goes to Parliament, of course, with the recommendations of government. So once the TOR is approved by Parliament and the appointment is approved by Parliament, then it's just a matter of setting up secretariats and, of course, providing the financial resources for it to do its work.
A moment or two ago, you called for a civilian government.
Yes.
Tell me why.
As I said, we are paying a big price on political crisis up to now. And I believe that it is time that we bring back a country or a government that is led by a civilian. And it's a lot more than that. I think a civilian government would, to me, a led government would have qualification to run a country. They would have the know-how. They would have the experience to run a government. A civilian would do that. A led government would do that. So that's the main reasons. And people like it. People like it. I mean, as I said, perhaps I'm the only one that have said this. But more and more, I think we have to get these issues out underneath the table to the top of the table. And somebody said to me, well, elections are based on popularity. I said, no, I disagree with you. Elections must be based on credibility and the ability to lead. So that, to me, it's a big issue that I hope voters will take that into account in this election.
That's interesting, and it brings me to another subject. What are your views on municipal councils getting back to what it used to be?
Yeah, I don't know what's the reasons for government not 16 years on has not brought back, or 8 years of elected government has not brought back the elections in municipal councils. If you really believe in the democracy of the system, you really need to reestablish this council. So the residents of that place has a say in the running of that city or that locality. Right now, they don't. So that's democracy for me. You can make these councils more effective, more efficient. That's another dimension. But we need to bring back those organs of democracy that has been removed. And one of them is this local government councils. Thank you.
Now, you have called on the ethnic balance in the public sector. Now, this deviates from the concept that we all are Fijians. We are all Fijians. I mean, please explain this concept.
Yeah. I thought I've mentioned that already. Within all this Fijian label, there are ethnic groups below that. You cannot ignore the interest of ethnic groups below that. You'll ignore it to your own risk. And that's why I'm asking for the interests of ethnic groups must be integrated into that whole Fijian concept. It can be, and that's where the peace, the security, the national unity will come from, will emanate from the ones that are below that national label. So that's why I believe we must pay attention to the distribution of CEOs and boards in the public sector, because they are paid by taxpayers.
So does this mean that you're going to implement some sort of a quota system?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Not a quota system. I think you just have to be mindful that those distribution allocation is sensitive.
All right. Let me now change our discussion, change our topic to that of the Constitution, Mr. Narube. As we know, this was a constitution that was imposed on us. You've labeled it so, an imposed constitution. Please tell me more about that. Your view.
Our manifesto calls this institution, labels it as imposed. And I think we all agree with it. Nobody disagrees with that adjective or adverb. Why imposed? People did not participate in the preparation of this constitution. If you're going to call this constitution a country's constitution, a people's constitution, people must participate in the preparation. We didn't. And I believe this constitution has not been passed by parliament. So that's why I'm calling it imposed constitution.
Now,
how are you going to change?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was just coming to it. You stole the words out of my mouth.
Okay.
Are you going to seek for a change of the constitution, and how are you going to change the constitution?
Yeah. That's a very interesting one. We will change the constitution legally. That's the principle. We think our plan is to establish a commission, constitution commission, to look at reviewing the constitution. We can do that under the current laws and the current constitution. There's nothing stopping us from that. So a commission will then make its recommendation to Parliament, and we will select a Parliament Select Committee to review the Commission's recommendations before they are brought to Parliament. That's the process that we will be using.
All right. Let me now discuss with you the Great Council of Chiefs. In some of the other measures that the Unity Fiji Party wants to implement, you have called for the restoration of the Great Council of Chiefs. If I may please ask you, why do you want to see the GCC return?
Yeah, thanks. People ask that. I ask back, why not? Why should we not restore the Great Council of Chiefs? What is the
Good.
reason? I haven't received any good answer why we should not restore the Great Council of Chiefs. None at all. So we know chiefs play a very, very important role in the lives of over 60% of the population here in Fiji. Over 60%. And the chiefs don't deserve the insult that they have been subjected to. They don't. What have they done to be insulted? So I believe that the Great Council of Chiefs have a place in Fiji, given its social and cultural fabric. But we would like to consider the GCC to consider a change, a shift in focus, more towards economic and social development. And we believe that's where they could play a very effective role.
So if you shift the focus of the Great Council of Chiefs on economic and social development, how would you do that?
Yeah, the GCC comes under the Fijian Affairs Act.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Right.
that was amended to remove them. In the processes inside the Fijian Affairs Act, and also in the Itoke Trust Board, there are provisions for the role of GCC. Still there, but it's not being complied with because there's no GCC.
Mm.
So that is in limbo. So to me, if we want the GCC, we can just introduce a certain amendments to the to reinstall the into the Itoke Affairs Act.
Right. Now, as you and I both know, one of the biggest issues in Fiji has always been the issue of land. Now, you have made several statements on land, like the establishment of a land review commission in the manifesto. Please explain how would you set this commission and what would their role be?
Yeah, land is always going to be a very, very important issue in Fiji. It is. And wherever many places that we have gone and spoken to in Fiji have expressed to us, some have really cried in front of us because of what has happened to their land. They don't know what has happened to their land. They're seeking answers. Why is government not releasing our land back to us after its lease has expired? What happened to the land bank? So they are asking us these issues. There are many land, for instance, in Taveuni that has been sold long time before, and the landowners are just restricted to a few acres. So that's going to be an interesting investigation, but none has been done in the past. So we think the best way to do that is through this land commission. Establish a land commission. Again, its members will be recommended by Parliament, by government to Parliament, and that will be established with the proper terms of reference. I would like that to investigate all the aspects of the land that we have heard now, including Schedule A, Schedule B, Crown leases, native land, and how we calculate the lease of a land. So
So
that's what that commission will do.
So they'll be empowered to do investigative work in terms of the land issues in Fiji, and then to make recommendations to Parliament. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, in your manifesto, you've also said that you will repeal the Land Use Act and remove the Land Bank, and that you'll also reverse legislation, including the infamous Bill 17. Tell me more on that, please.
Yeah, again, these things have been done without the consultations with the people. The Bill 17, all it needed to be done was to go and consult the people. A simple process, but government refused to do it. So there's been of ill feelings right across the country on this Bill 17. So we're going to look at that. And also the land use decree, which established the land bank. We don't think it's going to be necessary. We just plow everything into the economic transformation program. The participation of landowners there in the development of their land, the processing of their products, and the marketing is going to replace the objectives of the land bank. And in the land bank, they lose control of their resources to the bank. In here, in the ETP, they retain control. They determine what happens to their land. And they will get a much higher return from the ETP than the land bank. That's why we need to rescind the land use decree and together with the land bank.
Okay. Now, still on the issue of land, you also said that you will increase the lease tenure under ALTA to 50 years. How will you achieve this aim?
Yeah, the current maximum is 30 years under ALTA. So we would like to increase that to 50 years because we think that a longer tenure will stabilize the use of land and maximize the benefits out of it. 30 years a bit too short. We really like it to be the longer the better. And we will consult the landowners and all the TLTB and all those that are involved in that process. But I think, again, if trying to maximize the production from our natural resources, we need a longer period of time. We would also like to rediscuss in there the leases. As I said, that the Land Review Commission will investigate the basis of calculating leases. So here we need to balance both sides of the coin. We need the tenants as well as the owners. And we all know that once we balance it fairly, I think it should be acceptable to both sides.
All right. Now, over the term of this current government, and especially since 2018, there has been a lot of calls, in fact, calling for transparency and accountability. Now, when Mbani Marama conducted his coup and removed the Ngarise government, he said that his coup was to rid the country of corruption. Now, we have seen evidence of so much of unfinished projects, so many scams, as they say. The Unity Fiji Party has included corruption as a pillar of your manifesto. Please explain, how will you reduce corruption in the country?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's an important issue for Fiji. I think if we look at other parts of the world, we'll note this issue of corruption is very high in some countries. It really destroys the fabric of the economy. It's really going to be a thorn in our development. And our concern is that we tend to be heading in that direction. And we have watched with concern the weakening of the fundamentals of good governance over the last 16 years. And it includes the erosion of the independence of public institutions. We know that. The cloak of silence of civil servants fearful of their jobs, and just the lack of transparency in the financial status and operations of government. So we are putting that as a pillar in our manifesto, not as a sub-level. We're really out there in the pillar of our manifesto. So we're going to promote good governance and eliminate corruption.
It's interesting you again bring up that fear within the civil service. I've just heard this week that people are so paranoid within the circles of government, within the civil service, that two or three people can't gather together to have morning tea, share a cup of tea, and discuss, say, for example, the Sevens game. Uh,
Mm.
they're paranoid because the powers that be think other things.
Yeah.
Life has changed so dramatically. How do you bring confidence back in the country? Can only a change of government bring that confidence back?
Absolutely. If you remain with this government, this will intensify. That's my prediction. If we want this fear to go away, to bring back our confidence in ourselves, this government has to go. Simple as that. No? You mentioned the civil servants. I sympathize with them for a job at this time in our history. But they shouldn't be subjected to that. Nobody deserves to be subjected to that. So to me, this is the big issue that I agonize over in this country. We can recover economic and financial issues, but to be subjected to this in our own backyard, it's just unforgivable. I really, get emotional because of that. So you're right. You have to take away or remove the ones that is instigating the fear, and then the only way to do it is to remove them from government. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's like our school days, getting rid of the bully boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, over all the years of FICAC's existence, Mr. Narumbe, do you recall any cases of it investigating corruption? Okay, hold on, stop, I think. Please don't answer that because I don't
Okay.
want you to get FICAC'd. I don't want you to get into any stress.
Thank you very
We'll,
much.
we'll just move on. I think
Okay.
right now we're at that very, very critical point in Fiji's history with
Yeah.
elections just 38 days away. Please don't answer that question at all.
Mm.
Look, um, you are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and our chief guest this afternoon is Mr. Savenaca Narumbe, leader of the Unity Fiji Party and former governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji. And as I said, please like and share this page so that we can share the views with as many people as possible. I now come, Mr. Narumbe, to a very interesting part of your party's manifesto. Your manifesto speaks of the tumultuous past that Fiji has gone through, and in some cases, people are still suffering from those wounds. Some still have very deep scars from the tumultuous past. Now, your manifesto has identified several wounds from the past that you would like to heal.
Mm.
Can you state, please, what these wounds are and how will the healing be done?
Yes, this is a very, very important part of moving forward. We cannot cover these wounds and forget about them and think they are not there. And it's the whole things that we bring out in this manifesto. We need to get to the roots of our problems. Don't artificially cover them over because they won't go away. And here's the wounds of the past that we have identified in our manifesto. There may be many more. We have deeply fractured our people in the past political crisis. So here we think of course, establishing a commission for peace and reconciliation. Give them two TORs, at least two. The injustices that people received in the 1987 to 2006 schools. There are many. and particularly the injustices on people, particularly civil servants, and were pretended by law to seek redress from government. They were just simply sacked, for instance. No reason given, just because they were supportive of Garces' government. But all this kind of injustices are all there. Some even lost their families during this time because of what happened. It's a deep wounds, and we need to address that. We need to review the compensation given to tenants and landowners. I think basically tenants, when the land leases expired way back in 1999, 2000. I was in the Ministry of Finance at that time. We want, because of people have asked us to review this, we'll ensure that those compensation given to the tenants were properly based and that they were fair and adequate. Another is the communities that have come with historical contribution to Fiji, and I'm referring here particularly to the descendants of our Melanesians from Solomon Islands and Vanuatu. They have helped this country a lot, but they have been pushed aside all this time. They are not here nor there. So this is an injustice that we really need to correct. The other is we need to restore the field allowances that were not paid to peacekeepers in the Middle East. And we were told 1978 to May 2002. You know, Fijian soldiers have sacrificed a lot in peacekeeping duties. Some have lost their lives. No? At least what the country can do is to ensure that they get what they should have got. The government spent their allowances, part of it, and paid them only a small portion of it. And I was told that soldiers that served after this, May 2002, are receiving a full allowances. But the ones that went early are not. What's the justice in this? So it's only fair we look at that. And there's striking workers that are about to cool a gold mine. So this is perhaps the world record of the lack of strikes in the world. We will address their concerns and find solutions to them. So those are some of the wounds that we really are quite serious in addressing when we get into government.
So you've identified the wounds, the deep scars from the tumultuous past that Fiji has suffered. So how will the healing begin? You've mentioned the setting up of the Reconciliation Commission, but in other words, how will the healing be done?
Yeah, I think the money will heal a bit of that wound. We know that. At least they know they have been recognized. Their participation has been now in national interest. So that will give them some reconciliation, some peace, and some maybe there's just no way to get back anything in addition to that. But we need to talk to them, because just by talking through this Peace and Reconciliation Commission, I think that will bring up a lot of comfort that their message have been heard. So that starts the healing process. And then you go on, of course, with the other policies that we have to better the lives of everybody. I think over time, things may start to heal. So this is the start of the healing process.
Talking is so important because it lets people know that someone is caring, someone is prepared to listen. And that's a very good starting point. Now, Mr. Narube, I've read with interest at what you said at the launch of your party manifesto, and I quote, "I doubt that any other party will deliver a manifesto anywhere near in clarity and the depth of what we have done today." I find that very interesting. I find it quite bold on your part. How can you be so sure?
Yeah, I'm throwing the gauntlet to the other parties.
Yes.
we are out there already with our manifesto, and I said we are the only party in our history, opposition party, that has developed and issued an alternative budget in the last 2 years. So we believe that we have the skills, the experience to do that. And in the light of the new laws of estimating uh, all your promises, not only on expenses but revenue, deficit, and borrowing, that creates a different kind of challenge for us. We have the experience, and we have showed it in our manifesto. I'll have to look at what comes next after us and see if my boast is correct or not.
All right. And we could discuss that boast in a program, say 5 weeks from now.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about that in a while. Let me turn our attention to the forthcoming elections. And as we head for the home stretch now, let's talk about the forthcoming elections. Why did the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU between your party and SODELPA, get terminated?
Yeah, I thought we'd gone past that, but the MOU was initiated by Sodelpa. They brought the idea to us. And a few weeks back, we were told that the management board of Sodelpa has terminated it. I said, well, okay. We were not given any reason. But that is their prerogative, and they have terminated it. It is allowed under contract, under the MOU. So the MOU is now terminated. But we have agreed to work together, particularly on the scrutiny of the election processes. So we'll still work together on those at that operational level.
Okay. Now, in 2018, your party had just entered the election playing field before the elections. Now, you have had a good 4 years to plan things and have your game strategy all worked out. Let me ask you, how confident are you that people will vote for you? And do you think the Unity Fiji Party will cross that threshold mark of 5%?
Yeah, as you said, we now have much more time. We have done our homework. We are out there in the communities, spreading the awareness of Unity Fiji, how different we are from other parties, and the response has been very warm. So they say we need the change, but they also need to change to something that they can trust, something cleaner, something that has the broad support to heal the land and the wounds that has been there, and a party that knows the solutions to our economic and financial problems that we face. So that's I'm not saying that. That's what is coming from the people. So they really have quite. I'm quite encouraged by their support out in the community. So we are very confident that this election is not going to be anywhere like the 2018 election. How many seats are we going to get? You're saying the threshold? We're
Yeah,
looking
will
well
you?
beyond the threshold. Our target is 20 seats. Our
All right.
ideal is 28 seats. So in
Okay.
our calculation, and we are calculating from the support that we are getting, we are moving well beyond the target and approaching our ideal number. So this manifesto, once it's now launched, we feel it's going to help us achieve the ideal.
All right. A very important questions in the mind of Fiji's voting public. Those people who do not support the incumbent government, they worry about the number of opposition parties and how votes will be split. Now, at this very late stage of the game, I need to ask you this question. Will you agree to join a coalition after the elections with some other opposition party?
Yes, we will agree if no party wins government on its own. We have agreed to join the opposition parties form government. But
Two
we have
questions.
mentioned it
Yep.
already. Yeah.
Two questions that arise out of that, and I seek a categorical answer from you. In that coalition, should an approach be made by the Fiji First government, would you consider joining forces with them?
Yeah, I've come to this election. I've given my time, I've given my resources to come to uh, uh, the political journey that I have entered, basically because of this government.
Mhm.
If we had a better government, a government that looks after us, that is honest with us, doesn't stamp on us, I would have just be where I was.
Mm.
I was comfortable there. I had a good salary, a
Yes.
cushy job. The reason why I came here to join is not just to walk into parliament. That is not my intention. The intention that I came into here is to change a government into a better one than what we have. So no, I will not accept an invitation from Fiji First.
Well answered. Then the other part of that question is, given that no particular party has the right numbers to form government outright, will you consider going into a coalition with, say, the People's Alliance Party and the National Federation Party?
We have been talking with Sodelpa under this that MOU. That as a first preference, we will coalesce with Sodelpa. But even if that's not going to be enough of our numbers in Parliament, we are ready to go into coalition with NFP and People's Alliance.
Okay.
It's in the national interest to me, again, with my aim to really clean out this government and put in a better one.
As you said, it is in the national interest. That is paramount to an individual interest or to an individual's ego. And you've just summed that up very nicely. Now, Mr. Narube, do you see the number of smaller political parties as being the spoiler effect in dividing opposition votes? Or do you think the voters are wise now to make their choices in a very intelligent manner?
Yeah, I think Fiji, the way it is, there will still be followers of those new parties. But for us that know the election climate, I don't think they will get over the threshold. See how that affects the other parties depends on the election process or the election systems that we are using. So if their election their votes are discarded because they don't get over the 5% benchmark, then that the effect is that it favors the largest party, the
Yes.
party with the largest votes. And I don't believe that is going to be Fiji First. So,
Okay.
yeah, it will defray votes, but I think the impact will not be like what we had in the previous elections.
Mr. Narumbe, I'm going to give you an opportunity now to send a message to the voters of Fiji. What is your message to the voters in Fiji as well as those who are abroad and who are going to vote? I'm one of them. I'm abroad and I'm going to be doing a postal vote. So, what is your message to the voters?
Yes, thank you, Shashi. My message is very simple. You know, this is about leadership. The leadership. we choose the leader that we believe will provide us that desires, that will give us the Fiji that we would like to give to our children. That is, to me, a leadership this election is about. And you have to base that vote on very substantive issues in our lives. And I firmly believe that if you look at this manifesto very, very carefully, it reflects the depth of our experience, knowledge, and our qualification. I doubt, as I said before, that other political parties will be like our manifesto. To me, it therefore should remove any remaining doubt that Unity Fiji is ready to be our next government. We are ready. We have it, as we have demonstrated in our manifesto. Again, some people telling me that the election is about popularity, as I mentioned before. No, I urge you, please don't vote popularity, because that doesn't bring you the issues that we would like in our lives right now. And a plan is only as good if it's implemented. Our manifesto, but Unity Fiji has not been in government. But what we have done is we have led organizations and ministries in Fiji. And in that, we have demonstrated that we can deliver on our promises. That is my understanding, my undertaking to the people, that Unity Fiji government will deliver its promises. Please vote on that. Take this election very seriously and don't vote blindly on popularity. And please turn out to vote. For those that may not be able to vote, this is the time to request a ballot, a postal ballot. And please talk to your family, and particularly the youth, on the importance of this election. Thank you, Shashi.
What about a few words about your team? I've had Mr. Mick Beddoes, one of your team members, who's
Yeah,
appeared in our program. What
thank
about
you.
your team? A few words about them.
Thank you. We have a very strong team in Unity Fiji. We have Mick Beddoes, who is the leader of opposition in Parliament. We have Minister that was in government. We have permanent secretaries that were in government before. We have high-ranking former police officers in it. So we have community leaders. It's quite a strong team. And a strong team is most effective when it's led by a good leader. So our team will be out there in this campaign for the next 2 or 3 weeks and meeting you, and you may be able to tell the strength that we have in our candidates team. Thank you.
And where can voters access your party's manifesto?
Yes, our party's manifesto are being posted in our Facebook. Just go to Facebook. And we yet to post it today, but we'll post it in the next few hours in our website. You can have that. If you really need to get a copy urgently, just email us, and we will shoot an e-copy to you.
All right. Wonderful. Finally, Mr. Narube, I would like to extend an invitation to you as the leader of the Unity Fiji Party to appear on a special program on SSTP on Sunday, 11th December 2022. On this particular Sunday, I will have all the major opposition party leaders and we'll have a brief discussion with them on their campaign, one-to-one, and most importantly, I will give each opposition leader an opportunity to deliver the address to the nation in their final appeal to voters. Will you please be so kind as to accept my invitation for Sunday, the 11th of December, Mr. Narube?
Oh, gladly, Shashi. I think you're doing a great job. And I would like to see more of the leaders come in and maybe in the same session and then discuss this. And that's what I've been asking people and the media here, if they can arrange that, a leaders debate, public debate before the election. I think the voters need to see us together, to be able to work out who could they vote for. I have not seen anyone that is prepared to host such a leaders debate. We see that a lot in other countries. I hope it can still happen. And I'm so glad that you offer me that invitation to on 11 December. And I hope the other leaders of the other opposition parties will also join. Thank you very much. I accept your invitation.
Thank you for accepting my invitation, Mr. Narube. Let me tell you, I am ready to host and to be the moderator of a debate between leaders in Fiji. But I honestly believe to have an effective debate, we need participation from the Fiji First Party. I mean, I'd love to have the Prime Minister come in and go one-to-one with yourself, Mr. Narumbe. Go one-to-one with Mr. Rambuka. Go one-to-one with Mr. Biman Prasad, Professor Biman Prasad. That's what I would call a robust, democratic session where you take the gloves off and discuss issues that are bread and butter issues to do with the people of Fiji. As I said, I'd love to do that, but in just, we're running for about a year now. This is our 43rd episode, and with all the breaks we've had over Christmas, etc., that's why it's 43. We have yet to receive an acknowledgement to my invitations to the Fiji First Party. We can only live in hope. And as I say, I work with the class, caliber, and integrity of the people that volunteer to come on the program. And to you, sir, with those words, I say a very, very big thank you, Vinaka Vakalevu, and thank you so much for being our chief guest in episode 43 today. It's been an absolute pleasure for you to discuss your manifesto, and I hope that our viewers found your session today inspiring. And to me, you have an eye opener of a document. So thank you. I wish you and all your other candidates all the very best in their campaigns. Stay safe in whatever you do. Please do not get FICAC'd. I look forward to seeing you on the 11th of December.
Thank you, Sashi. Goodbye.
Take care. Take care. Goodbye. Nisa More and God bless. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Well, to my viewers, before you leave, let me remind you that I'll shortly announce our guest for next week, our chief guest. As I say, thank all of you for taking the time out to provide your positive comments. I apologize to people in the last couple of weeks. I haven't had an opportunity to go and respond to your comments. I've just been very, very busy with my regular work, and that work takes precedence. And it's been a very hectic time, so I will try and get to it sometime this week. I thank all of you for taking time to provide those feedbacks. SSTP, we ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. As I say, Fijians want to know. That's all for episode 43 this week. To my SSTP team, as always, thank you for all your efforts for today's episode. And I must thank Nikhil as well for his session. Thank you, Nikhil. Now let me reveal the name of our chief guest for next week. Our chief guest for next week is, here we go. Our chief guest for next week is going to be Mr. William Ngavoka, leader of Sodelpa. There's a lot to discuss with Mr. Ngavoka, how the latest defections will affect the party, what programs are covered in Sodelpa's manifesto, what is the party's real expectation in the final countdown, plus a whole lot of other matters to discuss. I'm really looking forward to that interview with Mr. William Ngavoka, our chief guest for next week. And I hope you can join us for episode 44 next week. If you have any questions for our chief guest, Mr. Ngavoka, for next week, please send them via SSTP Messenger. I hope to see you next Sunday. on Sashi Singh's Talking Point at 11 a.m. Sydney time, 12 noon in Fiji, 1 p.m. in New Zealand, and at 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles and San Francisco. Don't be late, otherwise you'll need a doctor's note. So until the next episode, I wish you all a very safe and happy week. And just before I go, I'll leave you with this quote from Viktor Emil Frankl, who said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." I'll repeat that. Between stimulus and response, there is space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That quote from Viktor Emil Frankl. Well, Fiji, remember, your vote has power. Exercise your right to vote. That's it for episode 43 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Next week, a new chapter, episode 44. And as we say goodbye to you, we've reached more than 11,000 followers now. To each one of you, thank you very, very much. A big thanawad, a big vinakavaka level for having trust in the SSTP platform. Thank you. Till the next program, I am Sashi Singh, bidding you goodbye, namaste, and ni samore. Goodbye, world.